Good afternoon, everyone. Or I guess depending upon where you are, it could be good morning. I'm not sure we'll have anybody online that is for me to say good evening, but just in case, just not to be on the safe side, good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. So thank you all for joining me this morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Juliet Aurora, and I'm going to be spending the next 45 minutes to an hour with you, talking about some exciting stuff about the culture of your organization. So a little bit about me. My name is Juliet. I'm located in Burlington, Ontario, which is about 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on traffic, what time of the day you're traveling, just west of Toronto in Ontario. I run a bookkeeping and training firm called AIS Solutions in Burlington. We're a team of 12. And as well, I'm one of the co-owners and co-founders of Ninja. So let's get started. So we're going to be talking today about making your firm a great place to work and creating a culture that people want to work in. So a little bit of housekeeping just to get us started. The webinar is scheduled to run from for the next hour. I'm not going to say 1 to 2 o'clock because you may be in a different time zone. So for the next hour, I'll go through the agenda as to what the format's going to be. You will get an email following the webinar. That if you do want a recording of the webinar, you can just answer in the email and you can get a copy of the webinar as well. So I understand as well that most of you are probably in the middle of tax season. So if you are in tax season, I appreciate you joining me because I know how busy you must be. I'll try and get you out of here a little bit early. We are going to leave about 15 minutes at the end for questions as well. So I'm going to leave the questions to the end so that we can get to all the content in case people do have to get back to their busy tax season. Also, to let everybody know, I am doing the webinar from home this morning. We had an ice storm in Ontario over the weekend and had some ceiling collapse in our office. So I'm working from home today, which is one of the great advantages of being cloud. But in case you are having any technical challenges or there's problems with the sound, please just put a note in the chat or in the questions. And I do have Shannon on the line as well, who's going to help and kind of troubleshoot and will let me know if there are some challenges. Okay, let's get started. So make your firm a great place to work and create a culture where people want to work. So you have a team, or you're thinking of starting a team. And that's really what we're going to focus on today is now that you've either taken the first step to hire your first person or you're thinking about it, what is it that you need to think about? So here is the agenda for the next hour. We're going to talk first about why it matters. Why do you even care about your corporate culture? Why should you spend any time with it? You know, the focus usually is on hiring and finding the right person, but why does the culture matter? So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll spend some time talking about, okay, now that you know that the culture is important and you have to do something about it, what do you do? So we're going to talk about the process of developing a culture. Because, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning, that we're a team of 12, we've probably made a fair number of mistakes in developing our culture. And we're going to talk about, and I'll share some of the examples from our culture and what it is that we do within our own firm. And then again, we'll leave out the last 15 minutes for any questions that you may have. I'm an open book, so feel free to ask me whatever you like. And if I can answer it, I certainly will. And if I can't answer it, I'll try and get you an answer offline afterwards. Okay, so let's start out maybe with a definition of culture. And this is from Wikipedia. So Wikipedia defines your culture as the following: the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. So that doesn't sound very exciting. So let's take it one step further and talk about corporate culture, since that's what we're looking for. And that's what we're looking to talk about. It's not just culture in general, but corporate culture. So in terms of corporate culture, it's defined, again, this is a Wikipedia definition, the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or an organization. So if you have a team or you're thinking of starting a team, it really is a big step in the evolution of your practice. We usually put a lot of thought and a lot of energy behind the decision that we're going to hire, either for the first time or whether or not to add another person to our team. But we rarely put as much thought into the culture of the organization. So how would you describe your company culture? If you immediately think, maybe we'll start with a quote to get us going. So to win in the marketplace, first you must win in the workplace. And this is a quote by the CEO of Campbell Soup. So how would you describe your company culture? If you immediately think to, rock climbing walls or monthly sporting events or weekly happy hours, you might be headed in the wrong direction. I mean, that can certainly be part of it, but it's certainly not all of it or the most important part of it. The other thing that people tend to think of when they think of culture is the environment. So if you think of the Google offices, the really cool offices, or there's a company called Teamwork in Ireland that they have a slide in the middle of their office that the people can go up and down during the day, which sounds really fun. And your environment will certainly contribute to your culture, but again, it isn't really defining what your culture is. It's defining the environment. And so as the owner or the CEO or the founder of your business, spending time on your corporate culture, not just the environment, should really be up there on your priorities, just like defining, your goals and your strategic initiatives. But that's probably a whole other webinar just talking about those things. But really the corporate culture, I remember hearing a speaker at one of the Intuit QB Connect conferences, probably about 2 or 3 years ago. And he talked about making that shift from an entrepreneur to a CEO. And he said that as the CEO, your main focus, your primary focus should be nothing tactical in your business. It should be the people that you hire and the culture that you're developing. So it really is very important to how your business is going to flourish. Okay, so why do you need to develop a company culture? One of the biggest mistakes that most businesses make is to emphasize their customers. And if you saw in the previous quote, it talked about emphasizing your workplace. In fact, the most important emphasis for you should be on your employees, as they are the ones that are going to look after your clients. Yes, you probably will as well, but your ultimate goal or your goal may be to reduce the amount of time that you have the interaction with your clients and have your team be the one interacting with them. So your clients are, your employees are going to look after your customers. And as much as you may hate to admit it, and it may be a hard fact to admit, they will look after your clients pretty much the same way that you look after them. And the other thing is, don't think that you can develop your culture later and that it's something that you can think about after you got, a certain revenue milestone, or you need a team of 10 before you worry about it and what it looks like in your 4 walls. The culture of your business starts to take shape as soon as you hire your first employee. Yep, not your second, your first employee. And if you aren't determining what it's going to be, believe me, it's going to be developed anyways. The difference, though, is either it's you that does it, or it's your clients and your employees that do it. So if we are going through the points on the slide, so without a culture, we talked about, why you need a culture, but what happens if you don't have one? So I've already mentioned this, your culture will develop on its own. If you're not the one developing it, when you have a group of people that are under one roof or interacting on a business level, there is going to be a certain culture that is determined. Your team isn't engaged. Yeah, they come into work every day, they get their stuff done, but they're not really engaged, and they're not bought into your business to move it to the next level and help you grow it if that's what you want to do. One of the other challenges as to what happens if you don't have a company culture is that everyone is rowing the boat in a different direction. And that's really something that we found, and one of the reasons that we started to give it some serious thought. And we didn't think about, I guess, we didn't think about our company culture until we were probably 3 or 4 people in. And everyone, we had a great team, but everyone was kind of doing their own thing and doing things differently. And we weren't all moving together in one single direction. We also found, that negativity may be the predominant. You may have one person who is a negative Nelly in your office. And my apologies if there are any Nellies in the audience today. But you may have a negative person on your team, and they may end up being the one that dominates the environment or the mood that's in your office. Your team hates coming into work. If you don't have a great culture, even then they're coming in for a paycheck, which also means that as soon as they could find another opportunity to get a paycheck, either the same, sometimes it could even be less of a paycheck, they're going to stop coming, and you're going to start having high turnover with your team. When you have high turnover with your employees, the next step is usually unhappy clients, because there is a transition from one person to the next person to the next person. And your clients will feel that transition. And so you'll have unhappy clients, and then you're going to end up losing clients as well. Toxic cultures really do kill businesses. It's not going to happen, and it sounds really harsh. But if you're not developing your culture, and it becomes toxic because of who the predominant personality is on your team, or perhaps you have toxic clients where their attitude and their emotions come into your office as well and affect how everybody works. It's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, this is the worst case scenario, and it could take years, but it absolutely will happen. So you need to make a conscious effort and spend some strategic time building out your culture. In fact, developing your culture is probably one of the key things that can either take your business to the next level, or it can also drop it down a few notches. And I'll give you an example from my own experience. Again, fairly early on, we had a bookkeeper on staff who was probably our best technical bookkeeper. She looked after our clients fabulously, got everything done, never missed a deadline, was really smart, was able to pretty much handle anything that you could throw her way. But from a personality fit, she was really negative. And the negativity that resided around her and built around her was palpable. You could feel it in the air. And so we ended up letting her go. And I still remember her saying to me, well, you can't let me go. I'm your best bookkeeper. But absolutely, and we said that to her, absolutely, but you don't fit with our organization. So we let her go. And as soon as we let the rest of the team know that she was no longer there, the next morning, you could feel the difference in the office. So that was probably more than anything that taught us that we needed to pay attention to what the culture was in our business. Okay, so where do you start? That's always the tough part. It's always great having the idea that it's something that you need to do, but where do you actually start? So let's go through some of the process. Okay, so many people think that developing your culture is a function of HR, and it isn't. It's a function of leadership, and it starts at the top. So how many of you have heard this statement before, that a fish rots from the head down? And I know that's a horrible picture, but it was meant to get the point across. So what does it mean? It means that leadership is the root cause of an organization's failure and demise. There are a lot of people who've laid claim to creating this phrase, and I'm not really sure who the actual person was that came up with it, but you hear it a lot at leadership seminars. So if you currently have the wrong culture in your office, it's up to you to lead the way to fix it. Okay, so let's change this so we don't have to keep looking at dead fish. So how do you start? How do you do it? Where do you start? Again, it starts with you. And it's not perks. It's not monetary incentives. It's not ping pong rooms or pool tables or slides in the middle of your office. What it is more than anything else, it's identifying to say that you have a clear mission or purpose. And you've probably heard that term, mission or purpose when you're talking about goal setting and strategizing, and it absolutely applies as well, to developing your culture. That you have to know what you want your culture to achieve. How do you want your people to feel when they walk into the office, when they're spending so much time? How do you want to feel? Don't just think about this from your employee standpoint. Think about it as well. You have to spend a fair bit of time there. So you want to make sure that it's a culture that you also want to spend time in. Don't just build it for your team, build it for yourself as well. And then once you know what your purpose is, what your mission is, what those outcomes look like, then you want to be able to start setting some policies that enable that culture that you want. So this is usually the hardest part to identify, and we'll go through a couple of ways that we helped or we were able to identify, but it's usually the hardest part is trying to figure out what it is that you want your culture to look like, or be able to articulate it. You know how you want to feel, you want to enjoy going into work, but what does that mean for you? Does it mean that there's no stress, that it's a relaxing environment, that it's a fun environment, that there's that there's respect everywhere, that there's nobody, gossiping in the corner? What does that culture look like for you? What kind of environment as well do you want in your office? So you can approach this in a couple ways. And sorry, my mic cut out there for a second. So you can approach this in a couple ways. And let's talk about, what do you want your culture to look like? So we've kind of identified this a little bit as to what the feeling is that you want when you're there for the 8 hours. And this is a way that we did it. So you can approach it in a couple of different ways. You can, if you're visual, you can create something called a culture map. And a culture map, if you Google the term culture map, you'll see a ton of great examples that can get you started. And basically, it's kind of like a mind map, but it's around your culture. If you're a list person, like me, create a list. Start listing what these traits are that you want in your firm, in your office when you go into work. And I mentioned a couple already, no gossiping, respect for your fellow team members. If you want a supportive environment, and sometimes it seems like, well, yeah, obviously that's what I want. But being able to articulate it and then being able to come up with policies or processes in your office to manifest that emotion is the next step. Sometimes just making that list is enough to get the process started. And you may just assume that, well, isn't that what everybody wants? But being able to also articulate to that to your team is also going to change. It's going to change whether or not it happens more than anything. Or if you have an existing team, you can conduct a team survey to learn what's important to them in their workplace. Just make sure that you're also completing that survey so that your input is in there as well. So this is a process that we introduced in our office probably within the last 6 months. And to develop our culture, we probably tried a number of things over the years. The one thing you have to remember as well is that your culture is going to evolve. Whatever it is that you have laid out as the foundation for what it looks like now, as you grow, and maybe, as you move from person 2 to person 4, or person 4 to person 7, it's going to evolve. It's natural. I mean, our society is evolving, so of course our culture is also going to evolve. The larger you get, as the team changes, as society changes, the things that you're going to want to encourage between your 4 walls is also going to change. So don't assume that just because you're starting it, that it's going to stay static and you're done and you can just walk away and hope that it just continues. Okay, so here's the example of one thing that we've done. It's called keep, start, stop. And it's an exercise that we did with our existing team to understand really three things. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And what aren't we doing at all? So that's, I guess I said it in the keep, stop, start order instead of keep, start, stop. But okay, so keep. Brainstorm with your team about what things you want to keep in your organization. What do they like? What do they want to make sure doesn't disappear? And the way we did this in our office was we have a boardroom in our office. We sat there with sticky notes. And basically everybody got a whole bunch of sticky notes, and they were not identifiable by color, so that you couldn't tell, you know, that pink was this person's idea or thought, and that green was this person. So they were all intermingled. Everybody had different colors of everything. And everyone, I think we spent about 10 or 15 minutes, and they had to list, was it something they wanted to keep? And they put, you know, a K in the corner if it was a keep item. So things that you're already doing that they and you want to make sure continue to happen. Then they also did start. What is it that you want to happen that we're not doing right now? And I think, I mean, you'll get some funny answers. We got, you know, wine cooler in the kitchen, or I think it was wine cellar in the closet. So you will get, you can see that wine is a theme in our office. So you will get some things as well that, you know, which is great because you have a sense of humor, if that's what you want in your organization, which we obviously do. And so start. You want to identify, you want to hear from them about things that they want to start. And then stop. What are we doing now that we really don't want to continue? And it's always interesting to see if there is a general theme that comes up where you've got 3 or 4 or 5 people coming up with the same idea on any of the categories. So I'll give you some examples of some things, if I can remember, of what came up out of our session. So on the keep side, there was training. We do a weekly training session, and we had lost it for a little bit because everybody was just so busy, so it kept getting bumped and bumped and bumped. But before that, we were doing usually half an hour to 45 minutes. We do a training session, you know, either about a challenge that somebody was having, or you know, a feature on an app, or something new in QBO. And it was a way for us to share some knowledge. We also use G Suite, so we've done some Gmail and filtering, and how to filter emails, and how to optimize your calendar and things like that. And so surprisingly, on the keep side was training. On the start side, as you can tell, I remembered all the funny ones, like the wine cellar and the, I think we had margarita days, and but we had, and I don't actually remember any of the other start ones, other than the funny ones. And on the stop side, it was an interesting one. There was one which resonated with a couple of different people and surprised me. And it was that they wanted to stop looking for documents, and we're paperless, but looking for documents in multiple places. So in some of our processes, there's probably 2 or 3 options that you have that you could find something. And so they were struggling with having to look in all 3 places before they knew where something was. And so that came up a couple of times on the stop list. And I was surprised as well that was important enough that there was more than one person that mentioned it. When we did this, we did a team survey probably, I don't know, I'd say 6 years ago. And it might have been longer than that. And we had a printer in our office that was a pain point for us, and we knew that it was a pain point. And one of the things that came up on what was the team survey, one of the biggest points that came up as to what they wanted to start was they wanted to start being able to rely on the printer. So again, such a small thing that I thought wasn't that important in the office, obviously it was. So from this feedback, what you're going to identify and understand is what's important to your team. And again, make sure that you're also participating and going through and putting the things that you want to keep, and the things that you want to start, and the things that you want to stop. because your input is also important. So don't just eliminate it altogether. And just a reminder as well, if you have any questions, please just put them in the question box and I will make sure that I get to them at the end so that you don't forget them as we're going along. Don't hold them all till the end. Okay, so that's one process that we have. The other one that we did was, again, with your team, and if you don't have a team, you can also do it yourself, and this may help identify what your culture needs to look like. So imagine that it's 5 years from today and that you've been able to create the most desirable company. What does that look like for you? And take a couple minutes and sit down and think about, what does it look like, from a size perspective? What does it look like from how you feel when you walk through the door? What does it mean with how your team interacts with your customers? Because if you can hear from them how they want to be able to treat your clients, what they're basically telling you is how they want to be treated. They're going to tell you the things that are important to them. So this is also a process that we've used in our office to get some feedback. And again, if you don't have a team right now, do it for yourself. And do it maybe from the perspective as well of how you interact with certain clients. We had a client, again, early days, we've learned a lot from all the mistakes that we made in our early days. And in the early days, it was, okay, yes, you want to hire us for your bookkeeping? Yes, we'll take you. Doesn't matter who you are, what industry you're in, what size you are, what you need us to do. Yes, 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 we can do it. And we had this client who wasn't really a nice person. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to say it and still keep the language clean. But he was not a nice person, and his team had huge turnover. It was like a rotating door, issuing ROEs all the time for his team, and because he didn't treat them very well. And because we weren't on site and we weren't interacting with him all the time, we didn't necessarily bear the brunt of it the way that his direct employees did. But there were times that, he was not necessarily nice to us and he was not necessarily polite. And we ended up firing the client and letting him go. And it was, again, it was a message that was sent to our team that you need to be treated with respect. And that if you're not treated with respect, because that is a core value of our culture, is mutual respect, it applies as well, to the way that our clients have to treat us. So think about it from both perspectives. It may give you an interesting viewpoint. Okay. Now that you know what you want to create, the next step is you have to build it out. So really, there's 4 ways that you can build it out. You have the framework of what your culture needs to look like from step 1. And there really is a ton of ways that you can incorporate the key components that you've identified in your culture, incentives. And it doesn't need to be a monetary incentive. What you want to do is you want to build out something that rewards the results that are generated, not just the hours that are worked. So, for example, if initiative is something that is very important to your culture, that you always want to be, moving forward and trying new things, do you have some kind of an incentive for those people that that show initiative in your organization? Context and rules. So you want to determine the rules and processes that are going to help them to create this great work and great culture. So, for example, autonomy. Is that something, that you want people to take ownership of their role? Then you need to also give them the autonomy to do that. Flexibility. Is that an important value in your culture? So in our organization, we do have an office, so everyone comes into the office, but we have a work from home policy as well that you can, some of our people, some of the people never take advantage of it and they want to come into the office, whereas some people absolutely, like working out of their pajamas for the day. And so we have, depending on where they are in the organization, how long they've been with us, that they can spend 10% of their time, 20% of their time working from home. So you want to be able to create, some context and some rules around it. So let's go back to the initiative example. If they show initiative, do they have the autonomy to implement the ideas that they come up with? So you can build your culture and shape your culture in different ways depending upon what it is that you want to include and as one of your core values in your business. So people. So this is the core of the culture, and it really should be considered from the very beginning, which is when you hire. So don't hire only for skill. You want to be able to make sure that they share the values of the culture that you are trying to build. So again, it's important that you know what that culture is so that you can determine some questions that you're asking, in the interview process, or one of the things that we do when we're hiring, when we get them down to a short list, is we have them sit with our team and have our team interact with them. And you'll be amazed at how many different types of questions this potential new hire will ask our team, who wouldn't necessarily ask Steve or myself, who usually do the hiring. And it also teaches you something about who your potential employee is, a person. So we had a potential employee who came in the questions that they asked us were all the right questions. You could tell that they were rehearsed and they very well put together, and they'd come in with a list of questions, and then we had them meet the rest of our team. And the questions that they asked our team members were questions like, what happens if you come in late to work? What happens if you're sick? How does the vacation policy work? How much overtime is there? And so that's going to tell you what's important to them. And then you can determine whether or not they're a good fit for your organization, which obviously in this case they weren't, and we didn't offer them the job. So people is core. You want to make sure that the people that you're bringing on fit into the culture that you want to develop. And then lastly, leadership. So who are the leaders in your organization? It's not necessarily just you. Whoever the leaders are in your organization, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a title. If you know that there's someone in your firm or your practice who others tend to look towards, you want to make sure that those key people, they are leaders, are maintaining and abiding and building that culture that you have in everything that they do. I keep wanting to say, are there any questions? But I'm taking all the questions at the end so that we can get you out of here on time in case some of you need to jump out. So here is a picture of Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE. And the only reason I'm showing a picture of Jack Welch is because I heard him speak, and it's probably got to be 5 years ago now. So I heard him speak at a seminar. And the one thing that he said stuck out with me and probably has driven every culture decision in our organization since I heard him speak. And the statement that he made was, and at the time he was trying to grow GE, was that the culture that he is trying to build at GE is that on Friday afternoon, when people are going home for the week, the thought and the feeling that they have is, oh no, tomorrow's Saturday, I don't get to come into work. And then on Sunday night, the thought and the feeling that they have is, oh good, tomorrow's Monday, I get to go to work. Now that may seem corny, and it may seem a little over the top, and I'm not sure that we're there, but it's something that we strive for. People spend so much time of their lives, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week in your organization and as part of your firm, and you do as well, that you want to make sure that it's a place that they want to go to, and that's what the culture really is about. Okay, so we're going to talk about some examples of our culture. So this is a wall in our boardroom. Our office colors are orange and gray, and so we've got orange walls and gray walls pretty much everywhere. And we have a wall in our boardroom which is called our wall of culture. And it looks like it's just a bunch of words that are stuck on a wall, but they actually aren't. The picture in the middle, which is trust is only earned above the line, was something that Steve and I felt very strongly about, and so it was something that we had, we wanted front and center. But all of the other words that are on that wall were actually voted on and debated, and some quite heavily debated, about what was important to our team. And we started out, I think, with probably 20 words, as everybody threw in words as to what was important to them. And then narrowed it down based on, what the consensus was between everybody about what was important to them when they came into the office. And then underneath each of, you can see the big words, gratitude and teamwork. Underneath those, there's little definitions to clarify. And so when our team sees this wall, which is, again, front and center in our boardroom, it really is a reminder of what's important. So if you're not sure about, whether or not to do something, how does it relate to our wall of culture? Does it fit with integrity, for example? And if you're planning, you're on overload, or someone on the team is overloaded and they're not getting any balance in their life, then what can you do to step in and help them to achieve some balance? So that, because balance was an important word that was on our wall. So that's one thing, which we have a wall of culture. The other wall in our office is called our wall of fame. And this is basically recognition for everyone, the certifications that they've achieved. And it's I guess, highlighting and appreciating the effort that they go to. And so we have a wall of fame in our office as well for them to get recognized. We celebrate. We do a lot of celebrations in our office. So we do birthdays, and this is a picture of me, and it is a birthday celebration. And if it is your birthday and we don't necessarily celebrate it on the day, so you don't know when it's coming. It's done, I think, within the month. I think it's birthday month. So you are required to wear a silly hat of some sort, silly glasses of some sort, and usually, some kind of banner, like a princess banner or something like that. So we do a lot of celebrations. So here is another member of my team, and her hat that she had to wear was Minnie Mouse ears. And we have a whole selection. You get to pick which one you want to wear most of the time. Sometimes it's mandated, but we do the celebrations. We have game day in our office. So every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, from 2 to 2:30 is game day. And our team is broken out, or our office is broken out into 2 teams, and it's the same teams all the time, that regardless of what the game is. And the game cycle usually works 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the game. So here we were doing mini golfing. And you can see our ninja is sitting on the top of our makeshift mini golfing. And the camaraderie base is just amazing that comes out of this half an hour, that is spent. And everyone says to me, well, how can you pull out everyone for half an hour? You can. You absolutely can. There have been days, where someone said, okay, well, I've got this deadline, I really can't, and it's fine. But for the most part, everyone is able to pull out a half an hour to play these games. And then you get a lot of smack talk in our office as well, even though respect is one of our core values when it comes around the game days and our teams. And then at the end of the 4 weeks or 6 weeks, when the game series is over, the losing team has to buy it's a Starbucks run for the winning team. And right now, the cycle of games that we're going through, I think we're about 5 weeks in, is Pictionary is what we're playing. But we've done trivia, we've done Nerf gun shooting in our office. So there's a lot of different things that we've done for game day. And then we talked about purpose, creating a mission and a purpose. And so we wanted to come up with something that made us bigger than ourselves. And so last year was the first year we did this. We had always pulled out, 1 or 2 days a year that we closed the office and we did some kind of charity event. And the charity event varied. We've done, like the CIBC Run for the Cure, and we've done the 24-hour relay, and a couple of neighborhood walks. So we've done a lot of different things. But we've done work with the some of the women's shelters as well, since we are predominantly an office of females. But last year we decided to do our own charitable event, and we did something which was called Steps to Success. And it ended up being an event that surprisingly, although it was a lot of work, pulled a lot of the team together in different aspects. And as well, it also pulled them together doing things that they wouldn't necessarily do as a bookkeeper or an accountant in an organization. You know, they were doing marketing, and they were creating posters, and they were, and basically the Steps to Success was a 3-day event designed to help women who were either entering the workforce for the first time or re-entering it after having been away for a while. And over the course of the 3 days, and you had to make appointments to book yourselves in, but we had career coaches there, people to review resumes. We had we had hairstylists there, and makeup artists, and stylists to put together outfits so that they could walk out of there feeling more empowered than when they walked in. And it was quite amazing, not only for the women that came through the doors over the 3 days, but also for my team as they all pulled together to do something collectively bigger, that was bigger than just us and our clients. Okay, so here are a couple of inspirational books or resources that can help. We're almost done, and we're going to open it up for questions. But here's some books and resources which are great about building your culture. So I've got Simon Sinek on there, Leaders Eat Last, Jack Welch, which is his book about winning, Richard Branson, The Virgin Way, Everything I Know About Leadership. Richard Branson has done a phenomenal job developing the culture of Virgin and all of his subsidiaries. So he's definitely a great person to listen to. And so we will end off with a quote from Richard Branson, that clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your clients. And there's no right or wrong way to go about creating a company culture, as long as you keep the staff that it's designed for in mind, you know, as you go along through the process. You and your team are going to, you know, spend so much time at the office. Life is way too short to not enjoy our time at work. So be as intentional about creating your culture as you are about, you know, creating your growth strategy or building out your business model. And the results that you're going to see are really, they're going to be tenfold. Okay, so let us open it up for some questions now. And see if there's any questions. Good morning, Carol. I got a message from Carol. Thank you very much for joining us. And then Arden, you're asking for the photo of Steve. In relation to what? Would that be the photo with Steve wearing the silly glasses and the birthday hats and everything? I'm sure, yes, the birthday photo. If you go to our Facebook page, yeah, not his birthday suit. Yes, I appreciate that, Steve. Arden, I'm sure that Steve would not want to post a picture of him with his birthday suit. And for those of you that do not know who Steve is, he is my partner and husband as well, but he's my partner in the organization. Okay, so we have a question from Scott. What would I say is the most important thing to look for in hiring our first employee? And that's a tough one. Okay, actually, okay, so when we hired our first employee, we did typically what most people do, which is you wait until you are so overwhelmed and so overloaded that you have no choice, but you have to hire somebody. And usually when you do that, you are hiring out of desperation, and you tend to let things slide. And you say, okay, well, you know, they're not perfect, but, and you're hiring to have a body in the office. And that's probably the mistake that we made when we were hiring. at the beginning was we were looking for warm bodies. We are so much more intentional about who it is that we bring into our organization. It typically takes us about 3 months before we'll find someone that we would consider hiring. And we have ads running all year round so that when we do find the right person, we can bring them in. So we tend not to hire for skills, but we hire for fit. Whether they're going to fit in with the rest of the personalities that are in the office, do they have the values that we do, that we want to encourage and grow in our organization? And will they fit in with our culture? So more than anything else, we can teach them skills. We can't teach them the values that are important to us in our organization. So hopefully that that answers your question. Any other questions? Very quiet group. It's so hard to tell if anybody's even out there with the webinar. Usually it's interactive, and I'm having, if it's a Zoom conversation, there's some back and forth, and I just feel like I'm kind of in this bubble talking to myself. So hopefully everyone is out there and they're listening. Okay, so there's no other questions. So we'll end off by, just give me 1 second, and oops, we've started back at the beginning here. Talking about the next session, which is on May the 3rd, for the continuation of the Intuit Business Builder webinars. And thank you very much to Intuit for having me out to speak with you. So the next webinar on growing your practice is the benefits of marketing on social media and how to use the tools. And interestingly enough, and honestly, this wasn't planned, I just found out probably about 2 hours ago that the May 3rd one, which is benefits of marketing on social media and how to use the tools, is actually Steve Lotes, who is my husband and partner. So you definitely don't want to miss him on May the 3rd. And there is the registration, and I think Shannon is going to throw the registration link as well into the chat so that you can just click on it, because that's a really silly number to have to write down. But again, you'll get an email after the webinar is over, just to make sure that if you want to get a recording of this, you can do that, and I'm sure that it'll talk about the next webinars that are coming up as well. And then I guess lastly, when you leave the meeting, you are going to end up, there's going to be a survey that pops up. So so you want to make sure that you answer the survey, because it helps Intuit to determine what topics you would like and how they can improve future webinars. So that is it, unless anyone has any other questions, which I don't see any coming up. So have an awesome week, everyone. The rest of you who are in the throes of tax season, the end is in sight, 13 more days to go. Hang in there, May is just around the corner. And have a great week, everyone, and thanks for joining me.